Okay, you made it to Module 9. Your marketing is coming together. Your business foundation's there. But guess what? Now you need the people. So in Module 9, we're going to talk about secrets to recruitment, hiring, and of course, the management of people. We are in the people business. It's all about people. Everything you do is about people. Whether you're a healthcare practitioner, a chiropractor, an occupational therapist, physical therapist, speech therapist, nutritionist, you name it, you are all about people. So when we recruit, when we hire, when we manage, don't forget that. We're not just picking up a pencil from Staples. We're hiring a person. And that person's going to represent you, your brand, the practice, and ultimately be responsible in some way or another in relationship to the customer experience. So I have this metaphor. One of my famous metaphors is that recruiting and hiring is the bread of a sandwich, but the management of people, that's the peanut butter and jelly. So it's so important that you understand that hiring the right person, obviously that's really important, but how you manage them is everything. No one likes stale bread, so make your bread choices really smart. But if you don't put the right jelly inside, that bread tastes awful. So let's talk about recruitment. How do we do this? I get it every day. Brandon, we got a supply and demand issue. I can't find someone. Not only can I not find healthcare professionals or clinicians, but man, finding a good receptionist, finding a good office manager, finding someone, I want like you in a little bottle that I can afford to run my practice. And I always say, well, you got to find the right person and you got to have the right systems in place. So step one, it's all about finding the candidate. So let's create your recruitment brand. What do you represent? What do you stand for? Why should a candidate pick you? What's their experience? You remember we were talking about that Apple experience? Well, employees act the same way, especially as we target different generations. You have to understand that experience is going to become more important for the employee the younger they get. It's just something that I've noticed. The millennial generation, they want an experience like nobody else's business. So what's your experience and why should they pick you? The other thing is, what are the employees saying about you? How is it to work? Have you ever Googled your company? What comes up? Not just what comes up about the company on, like, let's say a Google or a Yelp, but what are your employees saying? Go on glassdoor.com. Look at how they rank you. Look at the communication that is written about you and realize, and I realize this too, it's a lot easier for an angry person to talk about you than a happy person. But it's so important that you also empower your team that loves their employer and employee experience to write about it. What's your job description? What does that look like? So I say this because when I go into clients' practices, often they'll have me consult on the recruitment and management of their team. And the first thing I ask them is, show me your job description. And they say, oh, you want me to see the job ad? No. What's the job description? Do you remember in this last module we talked about advertisement versus PR? We want a job description, not a job ad. We want something that people can bite their teeth on and talk about and talk to. What does that look like? And then the last thing I want you to think about in your recruitment brand is, what's your differentiation strategy as an employer? Are you throwing in benefits? Is it work-life balance? Is it a niche? Are you training them? Is there mentorship, which is a huge piece in today's environment? All of these things are important when you're defining your recruitment brand. So once we have your brand, you know the job description, you know what's amazing about you, we got to share it. So we have to create your recruitment campaign. And one of the things that you're going to hear in the recruiting world in HR is there are several different things we look at, and one of them is, how do we source candidates? How do we find those candidates? Sourcing has become its own industry. 50 years ago, you had someone who was the office manager that would basically put out a job ad or whatever, and they would get their people, they'd interview them and everything. Now you have an entire industry just built on sourcing, which is actually finding candidates. Not just finding them through job ads, there's ways to find them in the underground World Wide Web. There's all different avenues for sourcing your candidates. But to start, let's look at a couple common ones. First is your job boards. There's Indeed, there's Glassdoor, there's LinkedIn, the list goes on. In the last 5 years, Indeed has become the opinion leader of job boards. And a lot of job boards actually get aggregated from Indeed or to Indeed, meaning that your job ad may fall into 50 little job boards that Indeed has aggregated them to, and you may even end up on mailing lists because of Indeed, meaning that I open my inbox, I get an email of top 5 positions in my area, and your job might be there. You might say, hey Brandon, how did that happen? I never did that. Well, guess what? You can thank your friends at Indeed for that. They're usually the ones that are aggregating that to that. There are paid job boards, there are free job boards. And there's this incredible software that I use. It's called an applicant tracking software. There's a lot of them out there. The one that I personally use is called Applicant Pro. I'm telling you, that's what I use. I have no skin in their game, but they've been an incredible applicant tracking software for me. I post my job and it goes to about 100 different job boards, most of them being free, and then I choose when I want a sponsored job. But it's been very effective. So that's our job boards. Then we go to social media. Again, talking to the people, not at the people. Well, I sometimes use Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter. I even use LinkedIn sometimes to find people. Sometimes I'll actually source someone on LinkedIn, find out their email, find out their phone number, and I'll put a call into them if they know anyone. There are incredible ways to find talent. Don't take the lazy way. The next thing is job fairs. There are times where I'm looking for a new grad, a recent grad, a college student or whatnot. Sometimes I'll use the association conferences or universities for job fairs. That's been effective, but I find the return on investment has not been as great as the two that I previously mentioned. The next one is huge, word of mouth. Build relationships with your team. Build relationships with the community. Let people talk about you. Share the journey. How many of you know someone that would love to work for Google or Apple? Most of you probably are raising your hand. Why? Because people talk about everything from the ping pong at Google to the emphasis at the cafeteria at Apple. They talk about their experience. They talk about things that they're willing to take a pay cut to be part of. So create your word of mouth referral basis. And then there's people that go old school. Personally, I found the return on investment is shrinking on this, but old school is postcards, snail mail, and all of us get them in the mail. My wife, who's an occupational therapist, gets about 100 a month. Work for this company, work for that company. She's never called one of them. But if you want to just blast out the world and get your name out, you can definitely do it. I just find the return on investment is lower for something like that. So step 2, now you've sourced them. You've got all these leads coming in. They're landing in your lap and you're like, Brandon, I got 20 interviews. Great! 20 interviews of solid candidates. Well, now we have to evaluate the candidate. So I've come up with a special 5-step process that has transformed the way that I hire employees. Are you ready for it? 1, I have an application questionnaire. Sounds simple, but it really works. I get the big questions out of the way. Hey, first and foremost, if I'm hiring a clinician, are you licensed? You'd be amazed by how many times I've gotten applicants for positions that they're not even qualified for. Well, that questionnaire will get them right out of the queue so they don't waste my time. The next thing I want you to do is an email interview. And I do an email interview for 2 reasons. One is I actually get more questions that I need, including what their desired compensation is, because that's important. I want to know their trigger points. But then the most important reason why I do an email communication interview, I want to see how they write. I get to track how fast they reply, how bad they want that job. I will tell you, there are people that wait too long, and when they finally email, I say, sorry, already hired someone. You're off my list. Even if I haven't hired someone, to send a message. Timeliness of communication matters. But also, how do they communicate? One of the things I do is I teach communication to clinicians and healthcare professionals. And I actually show this email interview that I do. And you would be surprised with the array of answers I get. When it's a 1-word or 2-word answer, like it feels like a Twitter answer, they're not my person. Because I'm in the people business, and my people invest in their words and they utilize them wisely. Not that they write a book, but they write messages where I can see personality, they're effective in their communication, and they start to build a relationship with me. And yes, I read every single email. My HR department hasn't even gotten involved yet. You know why? Because I'm in the people business. So I have to give my stamp of approval before I get my HR team give their stamp of approval. Because I first invest in understanding the person before I invest in, are they the right fit for the job? Then I do a phone interview. And again, yes, it's me. I do all my own phone interviews. I don't let my team do it because I want to get to know the person. And that's where I connect with them. That's where I get to see, are they a fit for my position? Are we a fit for them? Can they achieve their goals under the umbrella of my program? Very important. I'm looking for retention. I'm looking for continuity of care. And that in-person, that phone interview is where it all happens. I hear them. How do they sound? How do they talk? Are they enthusiastic? What's been their experience? What are they looking for, etc. So at this point, I actually pass the buck. If they pass my phone interview step, then I give it to my HR team. And my HR team will do an in-person interview. And at that point, they will get all the T's crossed and I's dotted. So at this point, after they've done an in-person interview, they've passed my personality evaluation, they've passed my communication evaluation, they've passed my professional goal evaluation, they've passed my HR evaluation, and so now we're going to do a clinical evaluation, and they actually have to participate in an observation with a clinician who sizes them up and tells me if I should hire them. And that is my bulletproof 5-step process and making sure I'm hiring the right talent. So again, my evaluation criteria, I'm looking at communication, written, verbal, body language, clinical experience, clinical exposure, clinical reasoning. I actually want them to bring in writing samples from their documentation. I want to see how they're clarifying it. And I ask them to do it in a HIPAA compliant way. And if they don't, that tells me something. They need to be trained on HIPAA. But then I want to know their professional goals. What are they trying to achieve in this world? What do they want to achieve now? What do they want to achieve in 5 years? And what's my role in helping them achieve those goals? How can I invest in them? Work retention, very important. I look at this when I evaluate their CV or their resume. How long are they staying at places? I'm being honest, I won't do an email interview for someone who's been at 5 jobs in 5 years. They're not my person. They might be someone else's person. Unless they have a cover letter that just justifies it to the sky is blue, chances are they will not have a shot with me. So work retention, ability to make a commitment, personality. I actually ask them their personality. Are they left brain dominant, right brain dominant? I hire both, but it's good for me as a manager also to know how to work with them. If someone is nature versus nurture, meaning that their nature, let's say, is they're very finite, they're very metrics, they're very, numbers oriented in that sense. Well, how I work with them might be different. Don't forget, I evaluate, are they a mind, body, spirit during this interview process? I want to know the why. What are their driving forces for not just being in this profession, but being here today, talking to me, applying for this position? And then a really important question that I have to own up to is this position right for them? They're always going to tell me what I want to hear. But through my questioning, through my interviewing, I often will find out if I'm a right fit for them. One of my clients right now, I am actually doing the entire recruitment process for them. And they are amazed with the quality and caliber of hires that I'm making because of this process. You can do this too. It's not rocket science, but it takes intention and it takes being able to look at things from a whole nother lens than just productivity. Productivity is not where you evaluate this at this point. So the last thing I want you to know is you want to ask, would I want this person to work with my family? I got 2 young kids. I got a wife. Would I send my wife to this person to get therapy or to get healthcare services? Would I send my kids to work with this person? Very important. If they're not good enough for my family, they're not good enough for my business. Plain and simple. So the key, and I'm going to say this, the key is transparency. Everything I do is transparency. I will tell you realistically, under promise, over deliver, transparency. On that phone interview, I tell them what I pay and I make sure it's a fit. I don't want to waste their time. There's no negotiation. This is what I can afford. It either works or it doesn't. And if it doesn't work long term, I actually build out their expectation of when they would get a raise, if they would even get a raise. Because some funding sources I have, I'm like, you're locked at this rate. It's a take it or leave it rate. Transparency is the key. And that's how I create authentic relationships. Actually, in every email that I usually start with, I say, I'm starting with a really transparent viewpoint for you because I believe that's my secret sauce in creating an authentic relationship with you. So don't forget, don't shy away from it. If you have a low reimbursement rate, paint it up front. Put it in your job post. Put it in your email to them. But do not shy away from it because at the back end, the worst thing is when they fall in love with you and then you break the bad news. It's funny. I always equate recruitment with online dating. I actually met my wife online dating, ironically. And I always say that how you present yourself and how you deliver is everything. And for those who've ever done online dating, you show up on that date and you're like, my date's not here, and then someone shows up and they're not who you thought you were. Be transparent. That's the reason why everything has worked for me, transparency. So let's break down hiring now. Step 1, when we want to hire someone, let's do an offer letter. And let's have that offer letter be transparent. So my offer letters include obviously the candidate's information, the job description, what my expectations are, what my credential requirements are. Do I require CPR? Do I require a TB? Do I require whatever else I require from a credentialing standpoint? Compensation, I break it down. Anything I promised is in that offer letter. They sign every single section they initial to make sure they're on board with it. Any promises, I welcome them to the family. I collect their signatures. Very important. So step 1's done on hiring. Now is the most important piece. This is the first impression of them being part of your family. This is your onboarding process. So onboarding is the key. One thing I want is when they walk through your doors, I want them to feel part of the family. Get your swag bag ready. Give them that glass water bottle with your company name on it. Give them a stack of pens. Give them your business card again. Make a welcome card from the entire team. Get them ready to be part of your family and make them feel part of your family. So here we go. Formal job application. They must fill out. That's where they put in their work history. Employment agreement. That is separate than the offer letter. That is a contract. That is an employment agreement. HR compliance package. Don't forget your I-9s. Number one thing you must have. And if you don't have an I-9 for every single employee, you should be calling me now because you are out of compliance. Handbook. Have your employee handbook. Benefits packet. Are you offering benefits? Educating them. Orienting them on what your benefits package is. An on-site orientation is so important. I pay my team members for their time during this orientation. And this is what it takes to get someone from a guest to a family member. Incorporating them into your family is all about that orientation. The welcome package, I even sometimes will send a letter to the family of the hire saying, thank you so much for being part of our family. We know that your husband or your wife has joined our team, and we want you to know that you and your family are part of our family. All part of that. And then I schedule check-ins. My HR department checks in with every single employee. First 30 days, first 60 days, first 90 days. Both with the employee as well as their supervisor. So important. So, are you ready for the peanut butter and jelly? Here we go. Let's break down how to manage these people. If you haven't figured it out yet, I'm all about empowerment. So how we say things is everything. Our words have meaning. If someone's doing something wrong, I don't come in and say, Josh, you messed up. No, I say, Josh, can I talk to you for a minute? Let's look at how we can be more effective with this process. Would it be challenging for you to do it this way? Have you looked at it doing this way? These are things that we want to see, but I empower them to want to be better. When you make someone wrong, you squash them. So don't do it. Bring them up. Enlighten them. Take the fear off them. Hold them accountable, but make them want to be better through empowerment. So here's the deal. Understand your team. Understand their personality. Understand their professional goals. Understand their work ethic. Understand their innate behavior versus learned behavior. Very important. What's innate? What's their nature? So important to understand. I want you to also understand the secrets to bringing the best out of them. Every person responds differently. Think of yourself almost as like a coach or a team. When a team wins a Super Bowl, you don't know how much work came from that coaching staff. How do you bring the best out of them? What's their level of buy-in? And then understanding the best correction approach. Different people respond differently to correction. I always recommend that you coach them both from a in-person standpoint, empowering, but also coach them through a written paper trail. So you have something to go back to and say, do you remember when we had this meeting 3 weeks ago? What's going on, Josh? Why isn't this working? How can we support you to be better? Give them a responsibility, hold them accountable, but take a little bit of responsibility too. This is a partnership. It takes two to tango, people. So let's make it happen. So the next thing is making it happen. Employee accountability, creative compensation. How do we do this? Well, onboarding is essential. So I always have an employee accountability agreement. I want them to sign off that we're on the same page. This. Are we in agreement? I initial, they initial. Metrics. I want to show them the metrics that they're being evaluated with, getting their buy-in that they agree with those metrics. That makes sense, Brandon. If I bring in and measure every new client I bring in, that's a metric that I'm responsible for. I want to own it. And I want to be proud, and I want to do a celebratory dance with you, Brandon, when I get those metrics to an all-time high. Make it fun. Individual bonus structure. Setting up bonuses when you can works. Tie it to productivity. Remember variable expenses that I talked about? Bonuses are variable. Give them when they count. A global team bonus. Create the buy-in. Give them ownership. Maybe it's a 401k contribution based on the overall growth of a company year after year. Every time we hit a 3% net growth over year after year, you get this much in your 401k. Creating buy-in, variable cost, all things we've been covering. Acknowledgement. Have an acknowledgement program. How do you acknowledge people? Give them a game. Give them something fun to earn. How do you let them showcase their skill set? How do you let them stand out? People want to be noticed. So notice them and let the team notice them. And then the next one I want you to think about is your culture. Everything's a game. When you turn the stakes to life and death, people get too serious and their efficiency goes down, their effectiveness comes down, their buy-in goes down, and their tone goes down. We want high, energetic, motivated, and efficient people working together to conquer the game. Get their buy-in, turn it into a game. So, retention is my metric for great hiring. Bottom line, retention is a matter of great hiring, empowering work culture, and unforgettable management. Let's do it. We can all conquer our business by hiring and empowering the greatest team possible.